what a great number of people. It's obviously something of real interest and of topical content that people are really interested in at the minute. So thank you all for giving up the time to attend this morning for this webinar. Emma's just put my email address in the chat if anybody would wish to contact me afterwards. Feel free to ask questions at the end or contact me afterwards if there's something more specific and personal that you would like to talk about. Without further ado, get my order. There we go. Thank you for joining this Neurodiversity in the Workplace webinar to give a understanding and really just to scratch the surface about what neurodiversity in the workplace really is. Neurodiversity or neurodivergence, and we'll come on to the meanings and all of that as we go through the next 45 minutes, is not a new matter, but it has been really emerging in this last 3 or 4 years, particularly in the workplace, as people either through diagnosis or self understanding and research believe that they have some form of neurodivergence that could affect the way that they conduct and behave to other people in normal daily activities. There's growing recognition for several important reasons. They reflect social change that we're all undertaking, the business needs, the legal obligations, and a greater understanding how people think and work. There are a number of the most intelligent, successful, and influential people around today who have disclosed a form of neurodiversity. For instance, Richard Branson and the success he's had with Virgin and Virgin Group. Dr. John Elder is an AI professor and an understander of neurodivergence and AI. Simone Biles, the highly decorated gymnast from the US, all the Olympic medals and Commonwealth medals that she's obtained, came out with a disclosure that she suffered from severe ADHD tendencies and used that for her strengths to gain the success that she has. Theo Paphitis, the Dragon's Den entrepreneur, financial data in intellect, who has gained success from his knowledge and understanding of financial markets and be able to spot opportunities to dig into in investment. And Chris Packham, the environmentalist and presenter from BBC, came clear about his tendencies for autism and ADHD a few years ago and has used that to his strength and benefit and to those around him to understand environmental data and guide policy and change and signify a better understanding of things that are impacting us all. It is estimated that 15 to 20% of UK adult population is neurodivergent, which translates to approximately 10 to 13.5 million people. A significant portion of these individuals are working adults, with estimates of around 13 million neurodivergent adults in the UK workforce. Neurodivergence is an umbrella term for the condition where the brain functions, learns and processes information differently from what the scientists say are scientific norms. Neurotypical is the consideration. Dyslexia affects around 10% of the adult population, ADHD 3 to 4%, and autism around about 1%. But that's still hundreds of thousands of people and potential workers that are not being tapped into and not being encouraged and developed and supported in the roles that could really benefit business. Many neurodivergent people do not have a formal diagnosis. It's really difficult, and unless they are identified through their education system and get what's called an educational care health plan, which is a legal document that will stay with them until they're 25 years of age, then it's really difficult to get an adult diagnosis. And a lot of people are reliant upon self-diagnosis and discussions with their GP perhaps to get that. But if they are making suggestions to you that they are neurodivergent or have some tendencies, then listen to them, take them on board, and think about the effect that the workplace has on them and what they can do to benefit their working experience. Labels are not welcome, but recognition and respect for neurodivergence is. Neurodiverse does tend to be most preferred global reference and considering the effects and strengths each brings. And in an economy where with high employment costs and low skilled and semi-skilled resources, then surely it's the best approach to engage with neurodiversity at work in the most positive way you can to unlock the unforeseen potentials. This morning, we're going to cover what neurodiversity means, types and traits of neurodiversity, legal duties, and then look at identifying and supporting and best practice, and just to give some industry roles that are typically beneficial and are good opportunities for people with different forms of neurodiversity. Neurodiversity is the concept that human brains and minds are diverse, the natural variation in how people think, how they learn and process information. Neurodivergence refers to when someone's brain processes information differently from what is considered typical by the scientists, not me, and includes conditions like autism, ADHD, dyslexia, and dyspraxia. Neurodiversity is the umbrella term for the natural variation in human brains, similar to biodiversity. Everyone is part of neurodiversity. We are all somewhere in the parameter, but the term is often used to advocate for neurodivergent individuals. And what do the scientists say that is? Well, neurodivergent describes individuals whose brains function or process information differently to what is considered neurotypical. It's estimated that about 1 in 7 of us in the UK are neurodivergent. So I certainly look at this and reflect upon myself and hear what my family say. And definitely, I've got some tendencies and some traits. I've not been diagnosed, but it's important that I understand those and my colleagues and people around me also understand what my particular strengths and my traits are when it comes to task activities. Neurotypical refer to people whose brains function fall within the range of societal typical norms. This is where the European Commission for Human Rights determine if the individual if neurodivergent would fall under the Equality Act. Neurodiversity in the workplace is growing in recognition as more adults are being formally diagnosed or identified with the typical, more common recognized autism, ADHD, dyspraxia, dyslexia, and other neurodivergent conditions. Organizations are moving beyond traditional diversity categories such as gender and ethnicity. That was all for the last 20 years has been a real important mechanism for balance and involvement and benefiting from all your workers in your workplace. Neurodiversity is now part of that consideration. It's recognized as a core part of inclusion, focusing on different thinking styles, alternative problem-solving approaches, and creativity and innovation. Employers are discovering that neurodivergent employees often excel in areas such as attention to detail, creative problem solving, pattern recognition, technical or analytical roles, process improvements. Companies such as Microsoft, GCHQ, Deloitte, and many engineering and logistic firms are openly championing neurodivergent talent. A good friend of mine works in higher education with young adults with neurodivergent recognition and works to prepare them an interface with businesses to make sure that the best opportunities are sought, identified, uh, recruited for, and embedded, and a nurtured, fulfilling career is therefore in front of everybody to enjoy. These companies are growing in number, and it should become part of every business's consideration now about how do I embrace neurodiversity better within my organization to make sure employees are fulfilling their potential. Construction, transport, logistics, engineering, IT, and manufacturing are all facing long-term skills shortages. And recognizing and supporting neurodiverse talent provides access to a valuable and often untapped workforce. There are some legal drivers to do this as well, but they shouldn't be the motivation, really. Many forms of neurodiversity meet the definition of disability under the Equality Act 2010. This means employers must avoid discrimination, they must consider reasonable adjustments, they must treat employees fairly during recruitment, performance management, and training and development. As awareness grows, employers are becoming more proactive about compliance. Younger generations and many older employees expect workplaces to be more flexible, more supportive, more understanding of mental health and cognitive differences. Neurodiversity aligns closely with well-being, mental health support, and inclusive leadership practices. Is this on your agenda? Is it on your radar? Do you have a strategy for encouraging and recruiting and employing people with neurodiversity? Campaigns, social media communities, and high-profile figures have spoken out openly about neurodiversity and asked for normalized conversations, helping reduce outdated stereotyping. My youngest son is definitely on a spectrum in autism, and I hear from parents because of his traits and some of his behaviors that he gets stigmatized with being a naughty child. He's not. He doesn't choose to behave how he does. And I'm sure this is the same for many employees, that they are labeled and stigmatized with behavioral traits that are not considerate of their diagnosis or potential condition. When we look at the strengths and traits of autism, not everyone will show the same understanding. Many autistic individuals excel at spotting errors others may miss, noticing inconsistencies, producing highly accurate work. This role makes them suitable for quality control, auditing, data checking, and technical roles. Autistic people often demonstrate deep concentration on tasks they find interesting, ability to sustain focus for long periods of time, and a strong commitment to completing work to high standards. This is sometimes referred to as hyper-focus, which can be a major asset in analytical and technical works. ADHD again presents differently. And people tend to bring with ADHD a strong enthusiasm for the task that interests them, the ability to work at speed when needed, a natural sense of urgency. High levels of activity and productivity can be expected, and the energy can be valuable in fast-paced, reactive, or hands-on roles. ADHD is also strongly associated with divergent thinking, out of the box, generating multiple ideas quickly, seeing problems from fresh angles, creative problem solving under pressure. People with ADHD often excel in roles with new ideas are required, where their adaptability and originality are needed. Dyslexia varies widely between individuals. Common strengths include strategic thinking, ability to connect ideas that others may not see, a natural ability to spot overarching patterns or themes. And this makes dyslexic thinkers strong contributors in planning, creative, and leadership roles. This is associated to inventive thinking, generating new ideas and solutions, approaching problems from unexpected angles, resourcefulness, and adaptability. They're highly valuable in design, marketing, communications, technological, construction planning, and service innovation roles. People with Tourette's syndrome have often demonstrated deep concentration, sustained mental focus, strong engagement in tasks, have high work output, significant strengths in analytical, technical, and task-intensive roles. Tourette's syndrome is also associated to imaginative thinking, strong problem-solving ability, unconventional approaches to challenges, quick thinking in complex situations, and benefit from innovation, design engineering, and strategic roles. The Equality Act protects neurodivergent people at work by ensuring they are not treated less favourably, that they're not disadvantaged by workplace policies, that they're not denied reasonable adjustments. In particular, they're not harassed or victimized for being neurodivergent or requesting support. That stigma and that label that has often gone before needs to be dealt with. It needs to be eradicated and changed to positive contributions and strengths that the people with neurodiversity can bring to the table. The Equality Act protects individuals from discrimination, harassment, and victimization based on protected characteristics. And neurodivergence is covered under disability. Many divergent conditions that we've mentioned can meet the legal definition quite comfortably because they are sustained conditions that have an impact on normal day-to-day activity. The employee is protected regardless of whether they have a formal diagnosis. So it's important that at interview, prior to recruitment, that we understand what that person brings and the challenges that they may face to ensure that we are making every opportunity available for them. Many neurodivergent employees only disclose their understanding, their beliefs, or their diagnosis when the workplace feels inclusive, the managers are supportive, that they don't fear of judgment or negative consequences. How can we do this as employers? We can encourage disclosure by promoting neurodiversity awareness, providing clear policies, training managers in supportive conversations, and emphasizing confidentiality and respect. One of the modules my good friend is working on with a number of businesses is that interview process. And think about how your style of that. How do you do it? Is it inclusive for people with neurodivergency? Think about the place that you're going to interview, the time of day that you are planning to hold that interview, the environment in which that interview will be held. Make sure you set your expectations, for instance, for recruitment when coming to the interview. Are you going to expect somebody to wear a suit or a shirt and tie when they might have extreme sensory issues around wearing such clothing and will not perform or probably won't come even to the interview? Do an audit of these processes, understand what those sensory conditions might be to make sure that your adaptations are able to benefit and encourage people with neurodiversity to perform the best when it comes to their interview. That can then be taken forward into their career in your business. Managers should focus on workplace behaviors and not the diagnosis, and indicators may include difficulties with concentrating in noisy environments, written communications, spelling or organization, time management or task prioritization, social communications or interpreting non-verbal cues, sensory overloads such as noise, light, and busy spaces. These observations should lead to supportive discussions and not assumptions. The rising cases that we are dealing with at THSP, all of these are considerations where somebody has raised an issue or made a beeline, a mockery of the individual who is showing these tendencies. It's got to be dealt with like any other form of discrimination. Would you accept sexual harassment or racial intimidation in the workplace? No, you wouldn't. So why should you accept this harassment or unfair or an unwanted treatment against people with neurodiversity? Encourage open and supportive conversations. It can be hard. How do you broach such a subject? But I think it's really important to be open. Managers are able to and should be encouraged to ask if there are any adjustments that would help them to perform at their best. Are there aspects of the environment that they feel could be making work more difficult? Ask what types of communication work best for the individual. This will enable the employee to share information voluntarily. If needed, employers can go a step further and look at occupational health assessments, workplace needs assessment, especially for dyslexia, ADHD, autism, and dyspraxia. Access to work assessments. These include an insight into workplace barriers, not the physical barriers, but the things that are preventing people from either attending work or performing in their work. Recommendations for adjustments will come out of this, and non-medical identification of needs will also be considered. No diagnosis is required for adjustments. If there are tendencies to show traits towards a neurodivergent situation or condition, then it must be considered and handled positively. How about providing staff surveys? Some employees don't want a direct conversation, so you can have an inclusion survey, voluntary neurodiversity disclosures, wellbeing check-ins, anonymous feedback tools. This helps identify support needed across the workforce. We have to look at a multitude of ways of communicating and breaking down barriers, opening doors for conversations with people who feel that they could benefit from some support and reflection of their workplace. As we've covered, neurodiversity is often linked with a number of strengths, with creativity, hyperfocus, problem solving, attention to detail, visual thinking, and big picture insight. Recognizing strengths creates a more balanced conversation and supports effective role design. So help managers with this. We can do a bit more of a deep dive on this topic together to engage and train and mentor and coach, provide some tools about holding those conversations and some aspects of reasonable adjustment they might be able to consider in your workplaces. So when we get to workplace adjustments, as we're required under the Equality Act to consider reasonable adjustments, what kind of things might we look at? Well, we might look at quieter workspaces if possible, or access to low stimulus areas. Think about the lighting, the noise around, the traffic, the pathway of people walking through those areas. Noise cancelling headphones can be beneficial to a lot of people and should not be stigmatized. In social places, I'm sure you recognize more people walking around with headphones on to cut out that overload of sensory noise that affects their thinking and their health. Screens filters or adjustive lighting to reduce glare can be really helpful for people with dyslexia, and seating adjustments to avoid high traffic or noisy areas could be really beneficial. Think about options to work from home if possible and where appropriate, at least on a part-time basis, to give some respite and rest to that workspace if the reasonable adjustments can't reduce the impact upon that person. Flexibility around shared workspaces situations, be really conscious of that. I've got a number of clients who have vehicles which are shared by drivers, perhaps on a day shift and a night shift or over weekends, whatever it may be. And if they are sharing a space, someone with neurodivergent condition is sharing a space with somebody else, they might have some tendencies and some barriers and issues with working in that same vicinity that somebody else has shared. It might not have been clean to their level. It might have been accessed or adjusted to meet that other driver's needs. Just think about the adjustments to that and have some arrangements in place. I'm not saying it doesn't stop, but make sure you are planning for it. Think about flexibility around start and finish times. People sometimes perform better earlier or later in the day, and therefore you think about their hours, but you won't know about this until you engage in consultation. Think about short breaks throughout the day to manage focus or sensory overload. I know people with ADHD, because of their high focus and high performance, need little breaks. It's like a 100-meter sprinter can't sustain that throughout an 800-meter race and need those little breaks to make sure they are resilient and refreshed and recharged and cleared of those overloads. Think about your communications that are clear, direct, written instructions. Use lists, bullet points, or step-by-step guides rather than manuals. Avoid reliance on verbal only instruction because they can get confused and misunderstood. And give advance notice of changes and meetings or deadlines where possible. Don't just drop it on somebody. Allowing time to process information before responding, allowing the employee to ask for instruction in their preferred format. You could look at breaking the work into smaller structured tasks, providing templates for common tasks, e.g. emails and reports, and reducing multitasking where it's causing difficulty. We could look at assistive technology like speech to text or text to speech tools, spelling, grammar support tools such as Grammarly and ClaraRead. Screen readers or more audible note tools are really useful in some circumstances, as are digital planners or reminder apps. And software that reduces visual distraction, e.g. colored overlays, are really helpful. There could be a need to consider extra time for training or written tests or courses that they attend to make sure that they can process the information and contribute their responses eloquently. There may be a need for recording of meetings or training sessions, providing material in advance. And one-to-one refresher support might be a good way to deal with this. So the sensory involvement of classroom activity may be displaced by that one-to-one approach. As I say, these are all reasonable adjustments. They shouldn't cost. They are just changes in management practice to ensure that we are being inclusive and supportive of persons coming into a workplace with neurodiversity. Examples of good employment practice, recruitment adjustments. Think about those alternative application formats. Look at buddy systems and mentorships, particularly with people who are open to consider and talk about their neurodiversity, or people who are accepting and knowledgeable and take an interest. I take a particular interest because of my son's neurodiversity, so I'm consciously aware of other people around me who may have similar traits to him. And I like to think about and work with those people to make sure that I can help and understand them as best I can. Neurodiversity staff workshops, there is e-learning available. We can help with that. It's an awareness of what neurodiversity is. There is a mass of information on social media, on YouTube, just to give some sound bites about what neurodiversity is if people don't really understand the complexity of it. Perhaps look at your workplace sensory environments, the canteen, the workspace, the interview rooms, the training places, the corridors, the parking spaces. Just perhaps look at those and see how somebody with neurodiversity may struggle to access those environments. And bring managers into training. So when we're talking about other pertinent topics, things that are very topical a minute, like sexual harassment, make sure inclusion of neurodiversity is also a consideration. The awareness is there and the benefits that can be tapped into are being foreseen. It's really important that we keep building on this inclusive culture. I think most organizations now have gone the extra mile and done a lot to address barriers or issues, situations, harassment, discrimination relating to age, to sex, to race, sexual orientation. I don't hear so much about that in my caseload and my colleagues' time with HR support. But what I do hear is about people with neurodiversity and not being considered, not being consulted, and not being included in the plans that they could be making for their career and their employment in your business. So it's really important to review and communicate your policies. Create networks, raise understanding and awareness throughout your workforce, and look for natural role models. It might be somebody with a diagnosed neurodivergent condition. It may be somebody who's got a understanding of what their traits are, but not diagnosed. Or it might be an advocate for somebody who is living with or knows of somebody who really struggles to access what neuronormal conditions people might be able to access. Taking all we've discussed today, the benefits of exploring neurodiverse traits amongst current and future workforce is really important. And here are some roles that lend themselves to some of the points people have been bringing to their employment. We've made some suggestion throughout the presentation, throughout this webinar, as to what the skills lend themselves to, but there is some indicative from research and companies that have been part of this research to understand where the roles or opportunities exist. In construction, detailed analytical design and monetary matters, manufacturing in detailed quality and inspection and control. Again, in logistics and planning and multitasking and organization, is deemed to be a real strong trait. And in the service sector, data analytics, marketing, communications, where detail and multiple ways of working need to be considered, have all come to the forefront as employment opportunities with people with neurodiversity. There's some key takeaways, hopefully, that you've got from today. Stay strength focused. Do not label or stigmatize neurodiversity. Remember, this is something that people can't influence or impact. They may be able to help lessen, manage situations by what's called a neuroplasticity approach, where they retrain. It's very much like cognitive behavioral therapy, where somebody is able to retrain and reprogram their way of thinking and way of working. But that takes a long time, and some people truly can't apply that process and maintain their neurodiversity. So focus on their strengths. It's like any disability, it is not going to change, it isn't going to improve, and it needs to be managed, and opportunities need to be presented by us all. Undertake a sensory audit, look at the spaces around you, the lighting, the sounds, the textures, the fabric, the storage, and take all that on board. There's lots of material that we've got available for this and online if you choose to go down that route. Remember, neurodivergent will be covered under a disability consideration within the Equality Act. So it's imperative that you consider reasonable adjustments as opposed to disciplinary and exit strategies for people who you don't think or your colleagues don't think are fitting in particularly well into that workspace. Be inclusive is really important. As I say, we've broken down over the years a number of barriers to other aspects of discrimination. So why don't we work harder and better at breaking these barriers down towards neurodiversity? Bang on 45 minutes, according to my watch, and I am open to any questions. Or, as I say, if anyone wants to contact me afterwards, email address is andrew.wilson@thsp.co.uk. Does anybody have any questions or anything they would like to raise in this? Nicola, thanks for sharing in the chat. The biggest challenge is people making meetings and long emails that could have been bullet pointed. I'm not unintelligent. I don't need everything explaining to the nth degree. I haven't told my department. I know, okay. But one person knows, and already the changes to what she offers me at work and wise and believes about what I may struggle with are widely inaccurate. Perhaps they need some awareness, some training, some education, some support themselves. Yes, if you do become aware of somebody or believe that somebody may be neurodivergent, then it's so important to get an understanding and break down those barriers. And they work in early years education as well. That's with the growing recognition in work, and my wife's an SEN teacher. And I know the expectation and pressure that the Ofsted and government and their academy trust is placing on recognition, identification, recognition, and support for neurodiversity. It unfortunately gets put with mental health, but inevitably it's people who are struggling, children who are struggling to cope with neurotypical school environments. It's the same in work. We are so neurotypical about what should be expected, and we're not open, we're not thinking about those with this divergence of different ways of processing and visualizing information, and we need to become so much better at it. Thanks for sharing that, Nicola. That's really, really brave of you. Recognise hormones can impact. Yeah, hugely. And to expand on that, Nicola, hormones with mental health as well, and illness and different ways of living life can exacerbate, can magnify some of the conditions and some of the traits that people have. Yeah. Thanks for sharing all that, Nicola. Are there any other questions? Anyone would like to make any comments or further any points that we've talked about today? So, do you have any tips on how to approach conversation with someone you think is neurodiverse? Yeah, my advice is always to be confident and forthright with people. If I get I get cases that people say this person's not fitting in, they're not listening to what their instruction is, they're going off track, they're not completing tasks. I want to put them on a PIP, or a performance improvement plan. I want to discipline them. I want them out of the business. Hold up a minute. Have you put it to them to say there's some things that have come to my attention that I'd like to explore with you. Is there anything that I need to know that you could share with me as to why these things have come to my attention? Is there something happening in your personal life? Is there something with your health that I in confidence could share with me, that we could have this conversation? And when that has happened, ordinarily all the all the bad stuff, the disciplinary, the sanctions, the exit, have put to one side, and there is an empathy, there is a presence, an understanding, and a duty that comes upon that manager to say, do you know what? I never knew that, and I really want to help and support them. I'm going to raise my awareness. I'm going to get better at this. Hope that helps, Louise. Any other questions? We're heading towards 11:15. I'm happy to stay on here, or you can contact me, andrew.wilson@thsp.co.uk. Uh, I'm overwhelmed. I'm really humbled and taken by the amount of people who've come here today to see this webinar on something that those that know me, I get really passionate about some of the HR and employment law topics, and this one really bites with me. I've got friends who work in the sector of neurodiversity and SEN in education. I've got my son to consider, and I've got a number of people around me that, on reflection, I know how they behave, and I accept that. I have adapted my way of consideration, and I'm sure they've done the same of me. And that's what makes us good human beings. So thank you for that. Thank you, Nicola. Um, if anyone's got any questions, then hang on. I'm going to be around for until the room is emptied. But again, thanks for everyone's time this morning, and take on board some of that. Thanks so much. Still a few people about. Again, I'm happy to take anything in chat, or feel free if you would like, turn your mic on or your camera. Yeah, Emma, Louise is asking, can we share the recording? I'm sure that will be made available to everybody who's been here today, and everyone else. It'll be on YouTube at some point.
Yeah, it will be on YouTube, and I will get it distributed to everybody who attended as well.
Thanks, Em. Yeah, Tamsin, really invaluable point there. People should be proud. We should all be proud of being who we are, I think. Does anyone want to have a chat? Come and put your hand up. His team's just remained open and attending here. I'll give it another couple of minutes. If there's nothing, then we'll end the event. It is absolutely, and nurture those strengths into benefiting them, the individual, making sure there's a career, there's longevity of employment, a happy workplace, and the business is benefiting from that output. 100%. Right. Okay. Thanks again, everyone. Everyone's got my email address, and do feel free to contact me. So go and have a great day and use what you can from that, and take things forward in your businesses, and see if we can come up with a plan, or at least a reflection of our current practice and what we might be able to do better. Thanks again for coming. Have a good day.